Hello again and welcome to our third video in our list or our description about tuples, lists, and dictionaries, data structures in Python, and basic ways of making data relatable in some way, shape, or form. In the last two videos, we've looked at tuples and lists and talked about how they're kind of similar in that they are both lists in and of themselves, but how they're different in that lists are mutable and tuples are immutable, which means you can change a list in memory, but you cannot change a tuple in memory. In this video, we're going to be speaking about dictionaries, which are very, very different. And the best way to think about dictionaries in your mind are two separate lists that are made relatable to one another within its own little category. That's how I view it in my head, and it kind of helped me wrap my mind around what dictionaries were and how to use them in Python when I first started out. I'm going to talk about that in this video. But first things first, let's mention that dictionaries, like lists, are mutable, which means we can change them in memory, and that's going to make them quite powerful. The way in which you make a dictionary is you're going to use, instead of parentheses or brackets, these squiggly brackets. And what you're going to do is you're going to set your name, the object name, and you're going to set it to equal to, squiggly bracket open, a key, and a value. That's very important. In lists and tuples, we were just dealing with single attributes within these lists and tuples. Sometimes you would have an attribute that or a value that had multiple values, like a list within a list, but it was a single value delineated and separated by commas. Dictionaries are very different because they are specifically relatable. There is a key, and related to that key is a specific value. A way to think about this in your mind is kind of, if you want to think about it this way, names and ages, which is what we're going to be working with here. And dictionaries are going to be very, very important as we kind of go through these lectures, specifically when we start talking about classes. And we're going to deal with classes in lecture number 11. But in order to talk about that, you need to have a basic understanding about what dictionaries are and how they work in Python. So I have created a dictionary here. It's simply my underscore DICT, and that's going to consist of three people, Tom, Jerry, and Fred. And Tom is 22, Jerry is 21, and Fred is 30. So let's go ahead and just print this off just so we can kind of get a sense of what the output looks like. And we see in the output, it has, once again, of course, no surprise, given us a list of all the keys and all the values within our dictionary. It's very important, very, very useful. Let's say we wanted to simply go through and add something to our dictionary. Now, if you remember, the way in which we did this with lists was we used the append function. We are not doing that with dictionaries. With dictionaries, we're going to do this a little differently. We're simply going to say my underscore dict. So go back to the name. Let's say we want to add in an individual named Frank. And Frank is going to be 40 years old. What we are going to do now is we are going to print off my... Let's do this 2 times, though, so you can kind of see how it's being developed in memory. So we're going to print it off twice, once before we add Frank and once after. And what we see down here in the output is that we have successfully added Frank to our dictionary. Now he is stored in there as well. And that's what I'm talking about here, is that we're making pieces of information, pieces of data, relatable to other pieces of data. In this case, names and ages. And that's really the backbone, the power behind a dictionary. If you go through and try to add a name that already exists in a dictionary, you will notice something that very interesting happens. Rather than seeing a second Tom added in, instead we see what? We see Tom updated. This is how you update names in a dictionary. To have a different Tom, you need to delineate him in some kind of new and specific way. So in this case, we're going to make Tom 2. And what we see here now is Tom 2 being outputted like this. So hopefully, I know this is kind of a quick video, but dictionaries are fairly simple to understand in their rudimentary form once you have a good sense of tuples and lists. So there's not really a need to go over a lot more here. We are going to get a lot more in depth with dictionaries when we start working with classes. And that's when you can kind of create very complex dictionaries that store a lot of data and how to actually create that. Create dictionaries much more quickly. This is how I've found that I always use dictionaries. I use them when I need to kind of create them in bulk when I'm working with lots of data that needs to be related to a specific key. So one key that has lots of different values that need to be attributed to it. For right now, though, I think this should give you a basic understanding about what dictionaries are. They're formed by using these squiggly brackets, and they are formed by making a key, this is important, remember these terms, a key relatable to a specific value. And the way in which we make those two relatable is we use this colon. And we separate all these different things out, once again, by using a simple comma. And this is how you kind of update or add to a dictionary. For right now, that's all we're going to talk about. Again, I'm going to return to dictionaries again in a lot more depth in lecture number 11. For right now, that should give you enough of a basis to move forward in this series. Thank you for listening.